When writing a story, whether it be a novel or an epic film, it's important to have subplots. While all stories should have, in addition to the main plot, something called a B-plot, C-plots, D-plots, and E-plots should play a role too. Smaller plots wouldn't change the entirety of the plot if removed, but when included, they can enhance the main plot, deepening it and providing a greater meaning to the overall story. While it isn't always the case, the B-plot is often the romance of a story. While the hero is trying to defeat the bad guy, he develops a friendship or rivalry with a companion before ultimately falling in love. Of course, romantic or platonic, the best subplots explore the characters in relation to one another. These character arcs, the changes to not only the characters themselves, but the evolution of their connection to others, give readers a reason to root for not only your hero, but the whole cast. The film which exemplifies this point well is the first Lord of the Rings. While the groundwork for these characters and their relationships are laid in the book, I will be focusing on the movie version. When adapting Tolkien's story, Peter Jackson knew the characters had to be more than names on a page. In order to foster a connection between the audience and each member of the Fellowship, bonds were strengthened or even invented between the various members. Before we continue, I'm Riley and this is Otherworldly Fiction. On this channel, I discuss fantasy books, share character backstories and world lore, and offer the occasional writing advice. If that sounds like your cup of Shire tea, hit that subscribe button. Posts are on Fridays. As a writer, whatever medium you work in, exploring the relationships between your characters is a great way to not only add depth to them, but to highlight the major ideas or themes within your story. Several of the relationships in Lord of the Rings not only develop the characters, causing us to care about them, but also enhance the plot itself by acting as metaphors for bigger concepts. Here are several relationships explored within the Lord of the Rings. Number 1. Merry and Pippin and Boromir. The bond between Merry and Pippin is solid in the books, but little is known about Boromir. Beyond knowing he's Denethor's son, and a future steward of Gondor who attempts to steal the ring from Frodo, there is little else. In the books, he is a tragic figure, and a lesson in how destructive the craving for power can be. In the films, though, he becomes a friend to Merry and Pippin. He teaches them how to fight, and laughs when the two hobbits doggy-pile him. It's only one scene, but it gives us a relationship. When Boromir is later overwhelmed by orcs, it isn't as punishment for his actions. Instead, he redeems himself. He races to the defense of Merry and Pippin, giving his life for them. His death is that much more tragic because of his connection with the two. When they see him fall, he isn't just their companion. He's a good friend who once laughed with them and ultimately died for them. Number 2. Aragorn and Boromir. Boromir also has a connection with Aragorn. The subplot between the pair, which focuses on Aragorn's mistrust in Gondor and Boromir's belief in Gondor, is set up before the Merry and Pippin arc, beginning when Boromir drops the fragments of Isildur's sword to the ground. His comment that these shards are no more than the remains of a broken sword underscores his lack of faith in Gondor needing a king, a point of tension between him and the man who could be king if he cared to. Boromir is an idealist, seeing the best in Gondor and loving it to an almost blind degree. Aragorn, by contrast, seems to care more for the elves than his own people. He leads the party towards Lothlorien, home of the elves, but makes a point of avoiding Gondor. He seems to hate Gondor, connecting it with the failure of his ancestor, Isildur. Like Aragorn's antecedent, Gondor is weak. When Aragorn refers to Gondor, he calls it your city to Boromir, rather than theirs. Following the capture of Merry and Pippin, and the seeming conclusion of their arc, Aragorn swoops in to fight off Boromir's assailants. Though Aragorn wins, Boromir is fatally wounded. He dies, but not before regarding Aragorn with the respect he would to a king. Aragorn, in turn, seems to have hope for Gondor, promising to do what he can for their people. This arc enhances Aragorn's own character arc, and accepting not only Gondor, but his role as its king. Boromir is a metaphor and embodiment of Gondor, and Aragorn's feelings towards him are actually the feelings Aragorn has towards Gondor itself. His relationship with Boromir allows him to verbalize his inner conflict about his homeland and who he is. In the end, he accepts Boromir as his fellow, along with accepting the city as his. He hasn't accepted his role as king yet, but Boromir's relationship with him has set him in the right direction. Number 3. Gimli and Legolas. Though the relationship between Gimli and Legolas has little effect on the main plot, it adds both humor and character development to the story. Initially, being a dwarf and an elf, the pair are resentful towards one another. Gimli more or less joins the Fellowship to one-up Legolas, and the two aren't above making snide remarks towards one another. After Gimli's own experience in Lothlorien, though, when the dwarf realizes that elves can be both kind and beautiful, the dwarf is able to soften towards his companion. Their enmity transitions into a rivalry. They aren't friends, but they make battles fun by beginning a competition where they try to kill more orcs than the other. As they fight in more battles together and swap kill numbers at the end of each fight, they develop an actual friendship. In the extended edition of the third film, they even end up drinking together. Their relationship is light-hearted, but it adds depth to the story. It makes the audience want to root for the pair. Both characters are enjoyable on their own, but together they are that much easier to love. Number 4. Frodo and Sam. In the books, Sam is Frodo's gardener and servant. In the movies, he is Frodo's best friend. While there is still a master and servant relationship between the two, with Sam addressing his friend as Mr. Frodo, the term comes to feel more habitual than formal. At the start of the film, the hobbits share drinks. Frodo pushes Sam into his crush, Rosie, and gives Sam assurance when he's fretting over the competition he has for her affections. When Sam eavesdrops on the conversation between Frodo and Gandalf, the wizard decides Sam will pay for his listening in by accompanying Frodo to Bree. On their journey, Sam panics at one point when he thinks he's lost Frodo. He explains that Gandalf made him promise he wouldn't lose Frodo. Even when he's no longer obligated to follow, Sam insists on joining the Fellowship. Elrond notes there is no separating them, secret meeting or not. Later, towards the end of the story, Sam tries to comfort Frodo, citing his promise to look after his master. When the Fellowship splits, Sam chases after Frodo. Frodo can go alone, but Sam is coming with him. He repeats the line that is the crux of his bond. He made a promise to Gandalf not to lose Frodo, and he's going to keep it. Sam stays with Frodo to the end, even coming back after being sent away at best and betrayed at worst by his master in the final movie. While their bond is implicit, the repeated promise and the ups and downs their relationship takes adds another layer to the story. Destroying the ring is challenging, not only because of its effect on Frodo's health, but because of how it tests his friendship with someone who proves to be more loyal than most. The bond Frodo has with Sam is also integral to the plot. After all, if it weren't for Sam, Frodo would have been killed. With such a role, Sam needed to be more than a dedicated servant. He needed to be a loyal friend, capable of being tested, and still willing to fight for their friendship. Number 5. Gandalf and everyone else. Gandalf has a relationship with each member of the Fellowship. While he is closest to Aragorn and the hobbits, the other members know his name and respect him. Trusted by all in Middle-earth, he is an unspoken figurehead to the Fellowship. However, he is more than a handy wizard, a friend, or even a wise leader. Gandalf actually represents the Fellowship itself, and in his seeming death, we witness not just the loss of a friend, but of the glue that holds the Fellowship together. Even as we learn later that Gandalf is still alive, the scene in which he falls to the Balrog remains a death. Not the death of a character, but the narrative death of the Fellowship itself. With Gandalf gone, the group quickly unravels. He is the one they all know, the one who holds their band together. But in his absence, the relationships turn tense. Aragorn and Boromir quarrel. Frodo pulls away, mourning, and the group ultimately breaks into separate storylines, following their own paths. In this way, Gandalf's ties to all the members act as a metaphor for the Fellowship, and his seeming death represents its end. In conclusion, the setup of these subplots allows the rest of the movies to be deeper too. While it goes without saying that establishing a connection between Frodo and Sam would improve their shared story arc, other subplots are revived. The connection Boromir shares with Merry and Pippin, for example, becomes integral to Pippin's own arc. With Merry removed from his side, Pippin is then influenced by none other than Boromir, when guilt over his death pushes Pippin to pledge himself to the service of Boromir's father, Denethor. Gimli and Legolas go on to have journeys together, and start another body count contest in the third film, where an elephant still only counts as one when Legolas dispatches it. Though Gandalf lives, his fake death to the Balrog still represents the very real death of the Fellowship itself. Without Gandalf, there is no Fellowship. With his fall, the group falls apart. New subplots are also introduced, such as the bitterness between Faramir and Denethor, but most of the plots are established in the first movie. The relationships between characters make the story matter and carry it through. The groundwork laid by these bonds even sparks new storylines. Even after his death, Boromir's relationship with Pippin influences his actions. Finally, several of the relationships, in addition to adding depth to the characters, support the larger themes or ideas as well, acting as metaphors for them. Whether you write films or books, developing relationships between your characters is integral, especially if you can use those relationships to represent the key ideas explored within the main plot. Which is your favorite relationship within the Lord of the Rings trilogy? Have you developed the relationship between your own characters? Do you plan to write a sprawling epic or something smaller? Sound off in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and happy writing!